Hey everybody, want to do a quick video here to discuss a little bit further the whole SOAPSTone idea, establishing the rhetorical situation as I was grading your enemies from within pieces. I'm seeing some people who are doing, an excessive amount of work for it, and I'm sure it's taking you guys an awfully long time. But then I also see some people who are still having a hard time doing a few things. One being really capturing the rhetorical situation. So I'm going to demonstrate that for you or model that for you here and show you what it is that I'm looking for. And then also, making explicit connections between the different appeals and the logical fallacy in the text. So as I gave you guys this assignment, I was moving away from necessarily giving you the entire template that I have here in front of you, the SOAPSTone template that you guys used before, that has all the all the prompts for each category. I was moving away from that a little bit on this current assignment, the enemies from within assignment, and hoping that you can kind of start to make sure you're addressing a lot of these things when you're thinking about the rhetorical situation. Again, guys, the whole idea of establishing and understanding the rhetorical situation gives us a broader sense of who the speaker is, where this content is coming from, why it is that the speaker even cares to deliver this content or this speech, and how is the speaker going about persuading us in whatever he or she is saying. So, when I assigned this, the enemies from within response, I recommended that if you're someone who still didn't feel totally comfortable, go back to, one of our earlier SOAPSTone responses and use the template. So I just want to remind you guys that this template is here. If you go back to, there won't be a clear end to the pandemic article, you can reference it there. The other thing too is, with our situation this year in the format of school, I don't have as much time in person to be going over things like this with you and to focus as much on this stuff in person as I would like to. So hopefully this video will help you to understand as you're looking at your grade for this enemies from within assignment, and you're like, well, why did I not do very well on this or didn't do as well as you would have liked? What I'm going to ask you to do is use this video that I'm giving you today and compare your response to a couple of responses, sample responses that I'm going to talk about here, and then also compared to what it is that I'm asking you to do. And once you look back at your response, if you have questions, further questions, because it's still not clear to you what I'm looking for, please then let me know, reach out, ask me. I also am going to let you know that if you didn't do really very well on the response, I will give you the opportunity to revise it and resubmit it to get a couple points back, okay? And the way that'll work is that I'll give you half the remaining points back, okay? So as we look at this, I'm going to pull up one student's example. I'm going to show you two today so that you can see two different examples. Now, few things that I want to point out is that as we're looking through on this particular response, you will see that this student did a really good job of not just, giving the name of the speaker as some of you did, but, she also delves into some other things. Like, for example, this idea that the speaker, Joseph McCarthy, probably has a college degree. He disagrees with Truman's foreign policy agenda. And she acknowledges that he speaks of traitors in the government that are allied with communists. All of this is giving us a little bit of that ethos and understanding who the character is. Now, the occasion, too, a lot of you pulled out that it was Lincoln's birthday, that it took place in Wheeling, West Virginia. Good. But the bigger thing, and what we've always got to be asking ourselves with the occasion, is what is the broader occasion? Yeah, we have the setting. Yes, we may have some other, little bit of information like the fact that it's Abraham Lincoln's birthday. But the bigger idea is that this is going on during the Cold War, during the Red Scare, when Americans are afraid of communism infiltrating the country. And so that is really important when we're talking about this particular speech, right? We've got to understand that occasion. So usually the idea, what I want you to do is to be able to kind of activate some of your background knowledge about history. And I know you guys are taking U.S. history, and you'll feel better about this towards the end of the year. But trying to place the time period and understanding nationally what's going on, okay, in a broader context. Especially in this case, it really helps us to understand this passage. For the audience, again, this student did a really good job, really talking about how the speaker is speaking broadly to the U.S. people, including people within the government. And she also starts getting into a little bit of the ethos, but, his use of our and us, alluding to the fact that, as she said, towards the U.S. as a whole, speaking towards the U.S. as a whole, but really trying to align himself with the American people. And then the purpose, right? What is the author setting out to do? And again, this student did a really good job discussing the war and the Red Scare, trying to put emphasis on how urgent the problem of communist imposters in the government is, speaks of the immorality of what communism and Stalin stand for, condemning those who are allied with communists. So this student captures a lot of the things that this speaker is doing. And sometimes, guys, what's challenging about this is as you're reading, it's hard to pick out exactly, the speaker isn't necessarily always going to directly say, this is what I want to accomplish. But in the end, you need to be able to, infer and use the information the author is presenting in order to determine, what action is the author trying to get his or her audience to take, okay? Now, as we move down to tone, and as we went into this assignment as well, I was asking you guys to pull out examples of tone, ethos, logos, pathos, and also examples of the logical fallacy, and then also to make sure that you explain them. All right, this student did a good job saying the tone in the piece, for the most part, is accusatory, right? So using an adjective to describe it with some emphasis on caution. And then towards the end, she pulls out this idea that he refers to, this moral war, all right, that helps to establish that accusatory tone. Now, when we go down to ethos, this student gave a couple, I guess, direct examples, but, the student was able to pick out that, Joseph McCarthy does have automatic ethos because of the fact that he is a U.S. senator. And so because of that, he already has automatic ethos. He has ethos established. People recognize him as someone in the government and as, a senator, someone hopefully to be trusted. But then she also picks out his use of us and our to connect with the people and establish credibility with the people. As you go down, now this is a really good example. Not only does this student explain that clearly he has researched McCarthy and has done research to establish his credibility, but then she goes on to give examples of the statistics that he uses to present an attempt to present a sensible or logical argument. Then as we go down to pathos, same thing. All right, she pulls out specific examples. And then not only does she just say what the examples are saying, she says McCarthy uses the comparison of religion to war, which may evoke strong emotions among churchgoers. That's the key right there. Right? If she's talking she's talking specifically, how does that quote play on people's emotions? How does that impact people's emotions? The next thing she pulled out was the quote of damaged mankind, that this evokes fear for the future, fear for ourselves, and fear for loved ones. All right, that is the explanation that I'm looking for. And then down here, she also does a good job. She identifies the logical fallacy. She says the author uses the threat of intimidation of the communists taking down the U.S. government from the inside and the threat of violence enforced by bringing up, and again, she gives the example of moral war. Let me look at, I know, if you're feeling good at this point, feel free to exit the video. However, I'm going to give you one more example that you can also use. This student organized her response a little bit differently by breaking out into bullets, which is totally fine as well. But again, she gives us a little bit more about Joseph McCarthy, not just his name. The occasion, again, this is key, understanding the occasion. She says America is at the dawn of the Cold War and post-World War II. Americans hopeful for peace, and gives a little bit of historically what was going on in a broader sense nationally at this time. talks about the audience, suggests the audience is all of America. And we can also, as she says, conclude this is a threat from McCarthy towards traitors. So at that point, too, we're also seeing that not only is his audience the American people, but also people that he views as potential traitors in America. And then the purpose, she simplified her purpose a little bit, or her response for the purpose, but is to use fear of communism to control America. And she the student captures the complexity of what it is that McCarthy's trying to do. I really like, if you're someone who, is having a hard time kind of seeing the organization of this, I really like the way this student organized it. She gives us the quote in a bullet, and then she has a bullet underneath that explains the quote, right? So for tone, she gives this quote, and then I like how she, again, uses an adjective to describe the tone, vindictive. And she says, which we see in this quote as he blames our country's vulnerability/weakness on traitors that, according to him, have been treated well by America. And she also says that he comes across as bitter and unforgiving. She does the same thing with another quote. I would say, guys, 2 examples is enough. Some of you had 7, 8 examples, which is awesome. I don't want to tell you not to do that, but again, just for the sake of, I think you get to a certain point where there's diminishing returns, right? If you pull out a couple strong examples, that just demonstrates to me that you know what you're doing. Excuse me, you don't have to go, super crazy with it. Ethos, again, she organized it the same way, gives an example, or in this case, kind of explains it and then gives an example. And then underneath, again, gives another quote and then says, ethos is established here because McCarthy identifies a common goal here, which is to protect America from the communism atheistic world. Okay, so again, she's doing a really good job of tying the idea of ethos, credibility, character to what it is that McCarthy is saying and doing. Logos, same setup. All right, and I like the way that she describes logos, because I think logos sometimes seems obvious to you guys, but she says this quote demonstrates logos because McCarthy gives specific numbers, facts in support of his argument, which is communism being a threat to America. Plus, it is logical to be afraid when the odds are not in your favor. That last sentence is the key, right? That it says it is logical to be afraid when the odds are not in your favor. That's how he's using logic or logos. All right. If we move down to pathos, again, she pulls out an example. The first one, she kind of ties her explanation and examples together. But in the second one, this quote definitely shows McCarthy's use of fear, and in this case, essentially a threat, propagandistic in nature. And he uses buzzwords to spark fear in his audience, excuse me. All right. Last one, same setup. So if this is something where you're looking at it and you're thinking, how can I go about better, organizing this just to make sure you cover everything? These are both really good examples. The second one might be something for you where you're thinking, this is a good way to kind of organize my response. So again, compare these to your responses. If you're still having a hard time figuring out where it is that you lost some credit, feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to really discuss it with you. I think the easiest way, it's kind of hard to do that over email. I think the best way to do is to probably meet, either, talk at the beginning or after class or during a free period, or even just, do a one-on-one Google Meet so that I can help you guys better understand. But again, compare yours to this and, hopefully it'll make a lot more sense. You guys have a great day. Thanks for checking this out.